Well over $180,000 in profits. Somebody that they said they weren't interested in selling. My sales manager, he said he felt something about it, so he kept following up with them. So that was like a $65,000 profit. Right after I bought the first property, I lost my job. The basement was in 4 feet of water with syringes floating around in it. I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? The only thing holding back is that mindset.
And we're live, guys. And today it's actually a special one, special interview with Mr. Corey Devol from Columbus, Ohio, who has a pretty good success with iSpeedToLead. But what you guys will be more interested in is that he's actually buying properties, he's fixing them, he's flipping them, he's listing them, he's doing novations, and he does it all. So, Corey, nice to have you. How's it going?
Thank you. Beautiful day in Columbus, Ohio.
And I would imagine your story will be lengthy, but do you mind sharing how do you get into real estate? How did it all start? Where the first time you decided to step into that, and what was your background?
Yeah, so most of my adult career, I've been in medical device sales. I still do it like 10% of the time. So I'm still in a couple of surgeries a couple times a month. But, my wife, she's a physician assistant, a rheumatology practice. I'm doing decent in medical device sales. And, still, I just felt like we're paying tons in taxes, not doing anything super, super exciting. And we're saving, we're paying our bills, thank God, but it's like what else? What else is there? What's next? Like, we got 3 boys. Inflation's crazy up. It's like, let's do something. I heard about wholesaling from probably some online things and started researching it a little bit more. And I found my first mentor in Canton, Ohio, that I found through there was a mutual friend, right, that we had. So I started talking to him a little bit about it, joined on board. There was a lot, right? It makes a lot of the gurus, they make it sound, like it's very easy, but, it's very, you got to have systems and processes. Otherwise you're just floating. And, when there's not a ton of pain, you float. In my experience, right? So not having that pain, which meaning we're very comfortable, monetarily with our jobs. I made it a side gig in the beginning, didn't get a lot of traction, pouring money into leads, pouring money into, cold callers and things that just didn't work, didn't stick, probably because we didn't have such a follow up, routine. And then I used a self-directed IRA, bought a first property. Right after I bought the first property, I lost my job, with my medical device sales job, and had another mentorship at that time that I was a part of in Columbus, and anxiety was just crushing in. I lost my job. I just bought this house. It was on a sheriff's auction the first time I walked into the house. It's destroyed. There was no pictures online. The basement was in 4 feet of water with syringes floating around in it. I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? Talked to my mentors. We got the house cleaned out, got the water removed, and listed it on the market just like as is, and made my money back in $10,000, from that first house that I purchased. And just from there, trying to again decipher from the wholesaling and the flipping. I did a couple more flips. I took out a HELOC on the house. All this time, my she trusts me, but she's scared, right? But she's just like, just do it. Like, she's like, I don't want to hear about it. Just tell me if we're bankrupt or if we're rich. Just do it, right? So even to this day, every house that I flip, my wife, she's always very supportive, but with all the kids running around and things, like, she hasn't even seen one of the properties that we've like renovated. So, but it's exciting. So after I did my first flip on my own, true renovations, I got very lucky with a very good contractor that was referred to me, and he did beautiful work. And, we got the house on the market, North Lawrence, Ohio, which is about 40 minutes from Columbus. A couple good comps in the area, nothing for sale. I bought that from a wholesaler, actually. Turned out to be a nice flip, couple multiple offers, no remedies, like, made it very seamless. I was very happy, especially for a first flip and not knowing a ton about it, trusting my contractors and paying him weekly, Home Depot every 3 days, doing a lot of work, helping them out. And after that flip is when I started to really focus back on the wholesaling, and putting some more systems and processes together. I didn't know anything about hiring. So, I used the company Remote Latinos. They helped me do some hiring. They held my hand. They helped me with contracts and interviewing, things like that. I hired my first employee, and that was in October of 24. And she was with me for 10 months, still, again, trying to put some things in place, getting some really good deals, buying a lot of leads from iSpeedToLead. And then about a year ago, I took another mentorship with Josh and Tiffany High. Results driven. And again, they blew me away. They're actually out of Columbus as well. And they bring in, 20 to 60 people every month into their program. And it took me about 2.5 years for them to let me in, because they didn't want Columbus people in the group. They had their first 2, people that they did let into Columbus in the group that actually became 2 of their biggest competitors, multi-million-dollar investors. So they're like, okay, we gotta limit this outside of, our markets. So 2.5 years basically of me kind of pounding them, giving, putting little teasers in a lot of their videos, things like that, reaching out on Facebook. And, they finally allowed me to join the program and learned a ton from them. So I started really scaling the wholesaling business in the last year. Got a new sales manager. Right now we have 3 acquisitions, managers, specialists. I've got 2 people on dispo and a lead manager. So we're cranking. My whole team is virtual out of Egypt. They all live kind of in the same area, which is nice. So they have a culture, or they're building a culture through the company with themselves, right? They go out to eat sometimes, break bread. They know each other on a more personal level, which is nice. But yeah, so I'd say within the last 6 months of joining that program, really focusing on my KPIs and my leads, our business has really taken off, and, we've seen a lot of successes.
Shared a lot. So that's the easy part for me, like to be the interviewer. No, that's been awesome. So let me ask you a couple of clarifying questions right away. But this is awesome. Like, no, it was great. When you first started, like you mentioned, like I was watching some videos, I got into wholesaling. Which year was that?
22, 23.
Okay, 22, 23. Okay, so you did your first flip. Why did you decide to do, like, you did the flip, right? Did you try to do wholesaling as well? Or you decided, okay, let me just do a flip fast. Maybe you got some spare money, so let's do that.
I was doing some wholesaling, and again, but I didn't have like a really good CRM. So like, blast texting, things like that, seeing what would stick. And, just, it was all me. Right. So, a lot of nerves, a lot of, and being a sales guy most of my life, like I was still heart beating fast on those first calls, like what's going to happen? I just don't know. Right. I don't know the whole process really. But it's, one of my mentors early on, he's hit one of his biggest things was just take imperfect action, and it's like, that really resonated with me because you got to do it. Somebody's going to be there to help you out. You can ask questions. Like the real estate community, especially in Columbus, like everybody helps each other, like tons of us know each other. It's just everybody's like wanting you to win, and in a sales career, I feel like, and especially medical devices, your competition, like they want you out. They don't want to be your friend. Let me help you because guess what? You might have a deal that you're going to send me. You might have a busy month and you've got a really good deal, but you've already bought a couple and want to take on a third project. Guess what? You're going to send me that good deal. It doesn't have to go out to the masses in dispo, in the dispo world. That's kind of where they win. So got on a little tangent. I do that.
Oh, it's great. Actually, that's like, since you mentioned it, let's give you some shout outs. So you still work interact with wholesalers. Obviously, the deal should be good. The deal should make sense.
Oh yeah.
So guys, whoever's watching us, you can text 614-300-2079. It's under Corey's headline. So make sure to connect for any opportunities. But for people maybe who are watching us, for the wholesalers who are watching us, which may be 3 rules you want to point out, maybe like common things or common mistakes, so you don't have a bunch of people like calling you with bad deals, wasting time because nobody likes that. What would you suggest?
Be honest with your situation, where you're at, what you're doing. You don't have to come off as an expert. We'll help you. Especially even if you're international. Like I've got a title company that'll send international wires, so you don't have to worry about having a bank in the States or trusting another wholesaler to send you money. Which I've heard that many times where somebody JVs. Deal gets closed and then somebody doesn't get paid. Like I said, be honest, know who you're working with. JVs are great. I think they're on a sliding scale, right? Like if I get a brand new deal, our team's going to try it out. If let's say after a week, we're getting some traction, but we haven't assigned it. Then we kind of open it up to the JV. There's other people that might have some buyers that they want to send our deals to. We're happy to do that. I'd say, let's see, number 2, just know your underwriting. Don't force a deal. It's got to work out for everybody. The word partner, I think, is very crucial when you're talking to sellers. If you're a wholesaler and you're new, it's my partners, me and my partners, my underwriting team. It doesn't have to just be all on you because you do have partners. Yes, you are wholesaling. Be confident in the fact that you've got partners because this is a good deal that, you're going to be able to take it to the final stages and getting it sold. And the third thing, don't be afraid, ask for a price reduction, but have backing and why you want to request that price reduction. Sometimes we might lock up things early. We try to lock up deals before we have pictures. We try to lock up deals before we do walkthroughs. Those come after. When we tell the people that, hey, if you're, if we walked every property before we locked them up, we'd have 2 or 3 people have full-time jobs walking properties that don't get locked up. So we'll lock it up, trusting you on the information you provided us with. We'll do our walkthrough. Sometimes, like I said, if it's something that I'm going to purchase right off the bat, I'll have an inspector go over, and I might, have my contractor go over as well to give me quotes. The contractor does that free of charge, but the inspector, they're local in Columbus as well. They're great great people. A lot of people probably know them as well. One of my mentors, Tommy Har, and his family. They're actually going to have a show on the end of May. I think it's one of the channels that they're doing. It's called like Zombie House Flippers or something like that. So they've just got a really fun family and, all ingrained in the real estate. His mom's the real estate agent. Dad's owned the inspection company. He's got two brothers that are on the inspection company. And Tommy's, the head investor with Legacy Homes here in Columbus. And we all use Tommy's family to do the inspections. They give us a great price. It's not full blown inspection, but goes over the major things, electric, plumbing, foundation, stuff like that, just so we can pass that on to our buyers as well. For under $200, we've got a little insurance policy to our buyers, and they like that. They like that we put a little skin in the game, that we're not just trying to lock something up and see what sticks. Yeah, so those are definitely the three things I think that stands out, is to know your numbers, make sure you're being honest with whoever you're talking to, if you're JVing, if you're talking to a buyer, talking to a seller, and just have fun with it. We're here to help people. We're not here to drive somebody into selling. It has to work out for everybody. That's what sales is. You're not forcing a round peg in a square hole. It's got to work out for everybody. There's got to be synergies. They've got to trust you. They've got to like you. And once everything aligns, that's when the magic happens.
Hey, if you are a seasoned investor or agent who is not happy with lead generation ROI or just considering to expand your reach, feel free to create a completely free account with iSpeedToLead via the link in the description below. Again, just a reminder, our users signed over 12,000 real estate contracts in 2025. We post over 20,000 real seller leads every month. And again, those are real sellers that would like to sell their house, or you are going to get a refund. So feel free to create an account, book a consultation call where we'll advise you the best way to start with us. Back to the video. Awesome. And since you mentioned you're doing deals all over Ohio, correct?
Yep. So we'll flip usually within an hour of Columbus, and I still wholesale in Columbus too. But most of my deals that I flip are in Central Ohio, and we market Canton, Akron, Cleveland, Dayton, Cincinnati, Toledo. Not so much the Youngstown area. I just haven't had much. I guess maybe I just haven't dug into it deep enough. There's a lot of buyers in the Dayton, Cincinnati, Canton, Akron, Cleveland, and Toledo area. We found some really good people even, to JV with on some deals. We're kind of breaking down our buyers list. Like we have our VIP buyers, right? That's kind of stage one. Those people get the full text, a full address, full pictures, full details, without having to request anything. Level two is our regular buyers list, who they get just the trim details without the full street address. They might be somebody that we've either talked to or they've shared some information with us, but we haven't fully vetted them or done a deal with them. Once they request more information, then we at least feel comfortable sending them there. Third step, is like the Facebook groups, the local Facebook groups. I feel like I try to get a deal done before a local Facebook group. That's why it's good to connect with wholesalers and buyers, or wholesalers. If you're a buyer, connect with those wholesalers, give them your LLC name, give them your email, give them your cell phone so they can add you to their buyers list. And, you might see these deals before they hit Facebook, because if they hit Facebook, in my experience, a lot of times it might be a tighter deal. It might be in a neighborhood somebody's, not necessarily looking for. Again, if you're a buyer and you're not marketing and you're looking for deals to flip or to hold, reach out to the wholesalers, have a conversation with them. Tell them that you're serious. Tell them how many deals you've done. Tell them you like to do seamless transactions, yada, yada, just so that way, they can add you to the tops of their list before it hits mass emails, mass Facebook groups, things like that. But that's just how we do it, because in my experience, the least amount of people that have eyes on the contract that we have, the more seamless it is, right? Once you start putting it in InvestorList, putting it in Facebook groups, there's a lot of bad wholesalers out there that'll, try to reach out to a seller and try to mess a deal up or things like that, unfortunately. And once it gets to that point, it can get hairy. So if we can get that deal out before it gets to the masses, we're happy.
And you're part of a big community, as we know. By the way, shout out to Results Driven. So what would you say when you compare it to other markets? What makes Ohio market great? Because I hear a lot of people like this market, like even guys who do a lot of deals nationwide, like, I love Ohio. Like it's one of top 5.
It's still growing. Ohio's still growing. And we're, I think, the 14th largest city in the United States. 13th, 14th, 15th. I always feel like we go back and forth with like Indianapolis. And you can buy a house here that's fully renovated, post 1960 build. It could be a ranch, it could be a split level, for under $300,000. And at a 30-year mortgage at 6% interest, you're under $2,000 all in with taxes and insurance, for a 3 to 4 bedroom fully renovated property. a lot of people can afford that. A lot of people can afford that. And there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of companies moving here in Circleville, Ohio. There's some Andrel, I believe is the name of the company. So Circleville is a small city 20 minutes outside of Columbus in Pickaway County. So that's one of my target areas. They don't have a ton of leads that come in because there's not a ton of housing. Once one of those leads comes in, a lot of times they could be a really good lead because, Andrel is building like a $5 billion military weapons manufacturing plant in Circleville. So it's bringing in tons of jobs. It's making the property values go up. And it's, like I said, we're still growing. Ohio's growing. Markets are seeing them. I think my first house that I'm still in, I bought 2013. It was a 5-bed, 3.5 bath, 2,500 square feet above, 500 underground or, basement area that was finished. I bought it 10 years ago for $192,000 and it was built in 2004. And it's the same kind of house on the same street, sold for like over $480,000, 10 years later. We've definitely seen a lot of growth. We've definitely seen a huge bust, especially in that post-COVID market in Columbus, but we're still way under property values are for most of the country. So it's an easy entry point. And I talked to private lenders, that want to lend on some of the deals about it. Like, I'm not requesting $1 million to do a flip. The last one I did, I just sold it on Monday. I bought it for $118,000. I put $60,000 into it. Closing costs, holding costs, $186. We were all in, and my pictures were late. So we listed the property on the market at like 1 p.m. on Saturday. And we had 3 offers on Sunday over asking, so it's like, hallelujah, right? It felt good. Check cleared on Monday, $52,000 profit. So there's a lot of deals like that. You got to know your numbers. You got to know your contractors, and it's a low entry point.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions, but I want to address lead generation since, it's iSpeedToLead.
Yeah.
And you do multiple things. I imagine what are your primary sources of, lead generation right now?
Cold calling and PPL.
Okay.
And so it's all outbound right now. I'm looking to maybe in the next month or two add some inbound type stuff, like maybe doing some campaigns for the print mail.
Mhm.
I always hear people, praise print mail, but it's very expensive. It's a very expensive entry point, and you got to keep it going. It's not like, let me do one blast, right? You got to do a couple times a month, different times, different pieces, because somebody sees a piece of mail, right? They have to either one, read it. They have to have enough pain to call the number. And then, or if it's something that looks like a check and they have to open it, right? Or, and then see that it's somebody wants to buy my house. I think the returns on that are very low for the percentages, right? Of like people who call you back. But it's like once that one person calls you back, usually, what everybody says is that it's a very good deal. So, but it's also, like I said, it's very expensive entry point. That's something that I found with like iSpeedToLead is that my return on my investments, has definitely been the best that I've had with other PPL companies. And it's all about, it's a numbers game, right? It's a rule of large numbers. You have to have a lot of leads and you have to have a lot of touches. You have to have a lot of drips. You're going to get deals. But if you're paying $300 to $500 on some of the other PPL markets who say they're exclusive, I call BS on anything that says they're really, really exclusive, because most of these companies are getting them from another source. That source says, yes, this is exclusive. I personally don't trust it. Or that other company that's getting the lead that's selling it to another PPL lead is actually only selling that to that one customer. Either they're taking them and sending them to multiple customers, or that person, that is interested in selling their house, they're filling out multiple forms online. So yes, that lead could be exclusive to company A, but if they've filled out 5 other forms that went to 5 other companies, and then they're like, why is everybody calling me right now? Well, it's because you filled something out online and they sold your information. All these, I feel like, that come in, unless it's a true inbound lead or it's from like a realtor or somebody that sends it to you, they're out there. So it's like, what can you do to maximize your return on all of these leads? That, yes, there's lists, right? There's lists that the county can pull. There's, people that promote those lists, and then you can skip trace them, you can call them. So it's all kind of the same thing. It's how are you differentiating yourself in your market with the leads that you have? Because yes, every day somebody new wants to sell, right? But it's how can you be one of the first couple to call them, to build rapport with them, so you can tell them you're in a good spot now. You got us. Just keep pressing end. If somebody calls you, just keep pressing end. You're talking to me now. I'm going to send you my contact. Save it in your phone. Save me as Corey buying the house, whatever it is, so that you see my number and you're not confused with another 15 numbers that might be calling you. Further into that, I talk to a lot of investors all the time. They're like, oh, my market's so saturated. The leads are so saturated. Okay. I mean, that's a limited mindset. That's all that is, right? Every market is saturated. Every market.
Every good market. There are some remote markets.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But let's say most markets are saturated, but that's a mindset thing, right? It's what are you doing in your business to make yourself stand out to that person that answers the phone, that talks to you, to get them comfortable enough to share more information, to let their guard down, something that we've always been big on with our process call. And again, it came from the mentors, giving them outs. No is okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. We just sold a deal down the street. We've got cash ready to deploy. We're ready to buy another one. Are you ready? If not, that's okay. But if you're ready, let's, if we can come to that number, let's do it. So that's something I've always felt passionate about when I sold something. It's not, again, you got to build a rapport. People are going to buy from who they like, and you can't force somebody in, and you got to tell them it's okay if I'm not the best option for you, but we have other options. Let me talk to you about them. We can do anything. If I can't help you, you probably can't sell your house, but we can give you a cash offer. We can give you a higher novation offer. And when I talk, go ahead. I'll stop for a second if we want to pull over to the novations real quick or what have you. But so let's say if we talk about novations, right? I always explain it to the sellers very transparently. So first thing they got to understand is you and I are going to come to the agreement on the price of the house. Okay, that price minus some of the taxes. That's an Ohio thing. That's what you're going to get at the closing. I'm going to take the house because I'm a very good, real estate investor. We're going to sign one other document that allows me to put your house on the MLS. I'll use my realtors that give me a discounted price. I'm very aggressive when it comes to, I take great pictures. If you've got a really nice house, I'm going to spend money to do the drone. We're going to get videos. I'm going to put some skin in the game. I'm going to put it on the property, put the property on the MLS for a higher price than what we're in contract for, because that's how I make my money. But I take care of everything. You sign the closing documents at the end, and I even have a way around that with another title company where I'm signing the closing documents, and I have a full power of attorney that I have a lawyer draft up. It can go to their lawyer. We can all be on an email chain. We can have a webinar. It's all above, it's all legal. It's all different, but not a ton of people are doing it, but you don't have to do anything other than if we get a showing within a couple hours, if you're home, maybe go get some ice cream. I'll Venmo you $10 to go get some ice cream, But we handle it all. There's also remedies, right? There's appraisal costs that come in at the end. There's remedies that might need fixed. If there's something that's a really big problem part that we already see in the house, we might even fix that before we put it on the market. I'm not spending, buku bucks. And a lot of times I'm not spending anything. If it just needs a little bit of paint or maybe, $500 for some spruce up the flower beds, things like that. Sure. Let's help them out. And then, so what I tell them is, look, I compare it to health insurance in America. You go to a specialist, depending on what your deductible is, this and that, you don't know what the price is going to be at the end. Whatever you list on the market for, you're getting a lot less money from that after realtor fees, closing costs, this and that all fall on you. So at least this way, if you're comfortable with that number that we're in contract with, then it works out, because you know what you're going to get at the end. It's not a surprise that you list your house at $400,000 and then, you see a check for $330 to $350. We know, what you're going to get. So sure. They like that. They like knowing, that, they're kind of hands off with a lot of that stuff. I always say I'm a very good negotiator. I'm good with the remedies and things like that. We can defer things. I will pay for the warranty, right? It's like a $700 warranty for a lot of big systems. If the systems are functional, then I'm not replacing it. The roof's 15 years old and they kind of push on it. I'm like, still got another 10 years of life, not getting replaced. If the HVAC system is kind of on the end of life, it's still functional. The warranty will cover that if it goes out, but we're not replacing it. It's just little, like I said, it's little tricks like that and things like that that you pick up along the way. But for the novations, like I said, if it works out for everybody and you're very transparent, it works out. But if you're making them sign a attorney in fact document and they don't know that you're going to put the house on the MLS, guess what? A lot of times it's going to blow up in your face, and then you're going to feel bad because you had this decent deal and that you're not getting anything from. And it's just back to that square one when we talked about, number one tip for wholesalers, just be honest with everybody. You don't have to say, yes, I'm wholesaling this deal and I'm going to put it out there to other buyers. But you can say, yes, I'm a partner. I'm a real estate investor. Me and my partners are looking for deals just like this one. And we'll be good to go. Just have to be transparent with everybody, build good rapport, and the deals, they come together a lot easier. Every deal that I've screwed up is because I feel like I wasn't completely honest about something that I was doing in my acquisitions process, or not dishonest, but not super clear with them, right? It always comes back on you. Every once in a while, maybe something will squeak through, right? But again, I learned it early on. I always tell people the only reason I know so much is because I've literally screwed everything up you could have possibly imagined at least once, and then I learned from it. If you're honest with your sellers and your buyers and everybody in between, it's not that difficult.
Gotcha. Well, and I know you have a hard stop soon, but question. You mentioned that iSpeedToLead is your best performing PPL. Okay. Do you know how much in total you closed with us in profits, and what was your biggest deal, and what was the story there?
I'd have to open up my KPIs. I don't have that in front of me right now, but well over $180,000 in profits.
Okay.
Definitely over 4 to 5x return, on my spend. Again, like I said, you can get multiple leads. You can buy the packages. I think the packages are great. Because again, it's all about large numbers. I've got to have a lot of leads in the system to filter out what's good, to filter out, who wants to sell, and filter out all that. And then it's all drips. Those are not one call closes. Every once in a while, one of those will happen, right? And it's really good. And you're like, man, this is so easy. But most of them are follow-ups and drips and long time processes. So don't get discouraged, but keep the pipeline filled monthly. Keep the pipeline filled monthly, because if 1 month you've got 3 or 4 deals, things get delayed, things get pushed, but you got to keep building it, because that's how you get the consistency, is by keeping the pipeline filled all the time, because there's always going to be deals that, get pushed, or there's going to be deals that fall off. As long as you just keep going, you're going to see the fruits of the labor coming back. That's what we're seeing. This month is probably one of my highest months that I've had in a long time. And I think we're going to end the month at around $115,000 in profit.
So all sources, right?
Yeah, all sources, flipping, wholesaling. Yeah, like I said, it's, I didn't start out from this. I was just, my mom's a nurse. Dad was a steel worker, just hardworking people. My sister and I were the first generation to go to college, get a degree, and still paying my student loans, 20 years later, they're almost done. But, it's like I said, and, it's all up here. It's all in your mind. It's all the things that, block I would say that force of average, right? It's building your mindset, expanding off of it, because that's the only thing that holds anybody back is their own mind.
Awesome. Well, before I let you go, one quick question. So what was your biggest deal with iSpeedToLead, and where was that?
That was in Columbus. That was in October of 2025. It was actually somebody that they said they weren't interested in selling, but my sales manager, he said he felt something about it, so he kept following up with them, and we got a property in contract at $45,000. And then the lady, and I guess she was actually talking to a couple of people, signed another contract right after me a couple days later for the same house, and I hurried up, filed an affidavit of interest with the county just to make sure, and was able to get a private investor, and we closed it at $90,000 like a week later. So I wholesaled it to another one of my LLCs for $45,000 profit. I was going to flip it. There was a tenant in there. Come December, I was talking to a friend of mine who he likes to buy in that area, and he's got a tons of rentals. So I sold it to him in December for $115,000. So made another $20,000 on that deal. So that was like a $65,000 profit.
Pretty good. Pretty good. And before
still waiting for a six figure one, but
let's freaking get it. And again, this is what I think the biggest takeaway for everybody. Like, system works. You have people, you have leads, different leads that you buy on iSpeedToLead. And again, I'm gonna probably talk about this separately. But before I let you go, let's say you mentioned a lot of things. You have systems, you have different leads, you're buying, you're flipping. Let's imagine we look at 2026 right now. Some people are watching, they're thinking how to start. Maybe what 3 advice you can give them?
3 main parts, right? You have to have leads. You have to have a CRM. I'd say, okay, 4 parts. So you have to have leads. You have to have a CRM to put the leads in, and then you can, funnel them and keep following up with them. And you have to make sure that you're implanting all of the information from those leads step by step by step. And then you have to do a buyer's list for that area. So once you get something in contract, you have a place to where you can start the dispo. Because like I said, it's a lot of work, as a one-man show. But again, if you're a grinder and you want to be consistent and keep doing it, you're going to see results. So you have to have leads. You have to have a CRM. You have to call those leads. You have to follow up with those leads. You have to get them in contract. And then you have to take that contract and again, find the exit strategy that's best for that contract. So, and there's a ton of resources out there, even on the dispo part, like, again, the Facebook groups are great for people to start. The investor base, you can pull lists from there for different areas of where you have a house, 10, 20, 30 miles. They have some free trials, so you can get in there, do some things. And again, it's a great resource, and you can use them, to build your buyers list. Just being consistent, giving up, because it's easy to, get a list, think you're going to do what some of the gurus say online and turn a $10,000 profit in 30 seconds. But it's every once in a while that happens and it feels freaking great, but you got to take a lot of swings. You got to, you're going to strike out some, but the base hits, keep getting base hits. You're going to get a double, you're going to get a triple, and eventually you're going to hit a home run. It's just the rule of the large numbers. Like deals are out there. Deals are out there. It's just about staying consistent, not giving up, and following your dreams and what your heart has in it. So
it was nice to have you. And guys, who wants to connect with Corey, if you guys have a deal or something like that, Columbus or even some other markets in Ohio, the phone number is below. And Corey, it was awesome to have you, and looking forward to you with us.
Thank you. Last thing, again, if anybody has deals too and they want, they're nervous about taking it through the process. Like if you even just have a contact, or you've got something like, man, this is a lead, like I'm afraid, I don't want to blow it up. Please feel free to reach out. I'll help you take it from step A to step Z. We can maybe JV on it, put more of it in your favor as I help you along. And I wish starting out, maybe I had somebody like that in my corner would really hold my hand. I need, there's a lot of things that you just don't know when you're starting out. Having somebody just to hold your hand through the first couple of transactions, and then you're on your way, and again, if you want to team up on some deals or something like that, there's always opportunities. And I've got an internal team and I have an external team. If you want to be a part of the external team and, call some of our leads and have some of our people help you out through the process. And again, I don't make anybody, sign non-competes. I want to do a couple deals together. You learn it. And then if you're ready to go on your own, and you want to try it out, then go do it. I don't want to hold anybody back. I've been captured by, non-compete with the medical device industry. And it's a fear tactic that holds you back, holds you down. That's something that as I became, a entrepreneur and a CEO, yada, yada, I don't want to hold people back. I want to help people grow. Anybody who's on my team, they want to be on my team. I'm not forcing anybody to be here. I want people to work with me that want to work with me. And I want to see people grow, do it on their own. Give me a high five sometime at some iSpeedToLead convention or something like that. And we party, have fun, and celebrate, and just watch everybody grow, because the only thing holding back is that mindset. If you've got the drive, you can make it happen.
Awesome. That's been awesome, meeting. And again, we appreciate your support, guys. Connect with Corey if you need the support. You guys can see doing a lot of things. Every exit strategy, fixing and flipping. And Corey, it'll be great to have you again. Looking forward to see more of your success too.
Thank you, buddy. All right, see ya.
Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our channel not to miss any new videos. Yes, subscribe right now. And feel free to check our completely free SKOOL community, where we have over 2,000 members and you can learn some of the A to Z's of real estate.